Hello and welcome to this special concluding episode of Founding Fuel's 2025 in Review, a series in which we revisit the forecasts made during the World in 2025 masterclass and explore how the year actually unfolded. Across our earlier episodes, we've traveled through China, the United States, and Europe, listening to Professor Yao Yang, Sandeep Vaslekar, Justin Logan, and Philippe Lecour as they described how 2025 reshaped geopolitics, power balances, and alliances. Each brought a distinct vantage point on a world in flux. Today, in this final episode, we turn to India and to the question that threads all these questions together. How have the biggest global shifts of 2025 impacted India's strategic environment? And what must India learn from them? To help us reflect on this, we're deeply honored to be joined by Ambassador Shyam Saran, former Foreign Secretary of India, and later Prime Minister Special Envoy for Indo-US civil nuclear issues, and the Special Envoy and Chief Negotiator on climate change. Few individuals have had a closer view of India's external engagements and the evolution of its strategic posture than Ambassador Saran. This final episode will be slightly longer than the others because it tackles an unusually wide canvas, one that includes the reset of the world order and what it means for India, the changing texture of India-US relations, how US-China competition is shaping India's room for maneuver, the state of the India-China relationship, including the global conversation around de-Americanization as the dominant external factor shaping India-China relationship, the domestic international implications of Operation Sindur and its aftermath, and finally, what President Putin's recent visit signals about India's balancing act in a reconfigured world. This episode aims to connect the dots between the views we've heard from Beijing, Washington, and Europe, and India's own strategic calculus at this moment of profound transition. To guide this conversation, I'm joined by my colleague, Dinesh Narayanan, senior journalist and the anchor for the series. Dinesh, over to you.
Thank you, Indrajit, for this. It was a fascinating discussion earlier this year as well, and we are hoping to have a fascinating one now as well with Ambassador Saran. This year, in my view, has been nothing short of tumultuous, and beginning with Trump's election in the US and later liberation day tariffs, a huge war in the Middle East, which sort of came to a ceasefire around July, and then Operation Sindur, of course, and now we seem to be seeing some kind of a shift happening in the Ukraine-Russia war, and now President Putin's visit to India. But the event which stood out to me and which sort of explained what is happening in the world today was President Ramaphosa, South African President Ramaphosa's comment at the G20 when the US skipped the summit, was that we will mark the US absent and then we will continue. And told the media, please don't get obsessed with people who are not in the room. So that's a very interesting comment. So my first question is that who is in the room these days, sir? I mean, there seem to be people who are important enough absent from the room. For example, the Ukraine-Russia deal, neither the Europeans nor Ukraine seems to be in the room there. So could you explain what has happened over this year to the world?
Well, thank you very much. And I'm very honored to be in for a conversation on the current international geopolitical landscape and where India is located in that. So to answer your question about with the G20 summit, yes, the US is marked absent, but the irony is that the G20 was actually, as a summit, was set up by the United States.
Yeah.
And that the United States of America should actually, be absent from a summit, tells its own story. And the story is that the United States no longer feels that the international system and the international rules of the game that it was really mostly responsible for putting in place after the Second World War. The multilateral institutions which were set up, the global norms which were put in place, it no longer works for the United States, or at least that is the US perception. So I think the challenge for the rest of the world is that can we continue with that same international system and the same international institutions, even if the United States of America is no longer invested in that. So I think what the president of South Africa was signaling was, if you want the cars to stop so that you can get off, please do get off, but the rest of us should be allowed to continue.
Right.
And I think this is where we are going. So there will be a narrower agenda on which the United States of America may work together with this country or that country, with this grouping or that grouping, as long as it sees in its own, redefined national interest.
Yeah.
But there will be a very large number of other issues of global significance, of global interests, like climate change, for example, or how do we deal with another, say, global pandemic. The United States of America will not be there. So I think the world has to get used to the idea that there will be rooms in which the United States of America will not be present.
And rooms where the United States of America will be present, where others would want to be, but will not be allowed to be in also?
Well, the ability of the United States of America to keep people out is also limited.
Okay.
So when President Trump said that I will not go to South Africa,
right,
but you hand over to a low-level American representative, and he was told, sorry, if you're not going to be there, there will be an empty chair. But we will not follow what you are saying.
Right.
So this is something which should be noted.
Right.
Next year, the United States of America is the the chair.
Yes.
Now he has already said that I will not allow
South Africa
to attend.
Yeah.
Will the others agree?
Yeah.
So this is a kind of a defining where the United States of America wants to determine who will be in the room, who will not be in the room, which room should be there, which room should not be there.
Yeah.
I am afraid that we are slowly getting to a point where people are saying, yes, you are a very important country. Yes, you are a major economic power. Yes, you are a major military power. But if you are not interested in working together with us on issues which we consider to be very important,
right,
please carry on. Let us go ahead with what we want. I think essentially that's the message.
Right. And you think US will, so let me rephrase it. For many years, since 9/11, for instance, a lot of US foreign policy has been predicated on security, right? And a lot of other issues, including probably to some extent, even climate change, was a give and take with the security interests of the United States across the world. How has that changed? Because the United States also is withdrawing from security across the world and also asking those who have American bases as well as American assets, weapons in countries to pay for it and put up more for their own defense.
So if you have to pay for something, then you want to be able to determine how your resources are being used. You cannot have a situation where somebody is saying, I will still make the rules and I will still determine how things are done, but you pay for it. I'm afraid in international relations, just as in people-to-people relations, that does not quite work, is it?
Yeah.
I mean, whoever controls the purse will usually call the tune.
Yeah.
So I think we should be mindful of the fact that even if it appears, as I mentioned, that the United States of America is the number one economic power, it is the number one military power, but to really envisage a situation where others are paying, for the US to be like a mercenary, essentially this is what it amounts to. I'm afraid that is probably not going to work.
That brings me, since you mentioned the purse.
That's a personal perspective. I do not think it will work.
Since you mentioned the purse, there is another candidate now which is offering a purse, namely China. How will that work out? And we have seen the US-China relationship going through a reset through the year, and where China has probably for the first time has inched ahead in certain senses in the on the negotiating table.
So there is no doubt that China is today the number 2 power in the world. It has far more resources to deploy than many other countries. In the United States of America, the resources may be there, but the intent is not.
Right.
With China, I would say the intent is there, but the resources are still limited. I don't think that we should think that China has unlimited resources. Also, you would have noticed that the Chinese economy is slowing down.
Yes.
If you're looking at longer-term factors at work, China is probably going to see an extended period of declining growth.
Right.
So that's a given, I think. So it is possible that China may grow old before it gets rich. That is a very real possibility. So we have to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
But what is perhaps even more important is that during this particular period, you have several other what you may call middle powers or emerging powers who are exercising greater agency, certainly more agency in their own regions than has been the case in the past. So as the United States of America withdraws from certain regions, there are substantial middle powers in the region who are in a position to really take up much of the slack.
Right.
So in a sense, we are moving to a much more diffused kind of an international geopolitical landscape. The problem is where do the chips fall eventually? That is not very clear. But I will make one other point. Western dominance is something which has been in place for the last 500 years.
Right.
Many of the financial plumbing of the world, banking system, the way in which we do trade with each other, all those rules of the game are essentially drawn from the West.
Right.
Most of our jurisprudence, international jurisprudence is all Western in a sense. So you have had 500 years of Western dominance, starting, say, with the Spanish and the Portuguese, then being inherited by the Dutch and the British, and then being inherited in turn by the United States of America. But the United States of America, don't forget, it's a European power.
Yes.
All its in culture, in traditions, it is a larger European power. So what you are seeing is that Western dominance is truly coming to an end. But this plumbing of the system is very difficult to get rid of in a hurry. You can't change the rules overnight. Even China recognizes that. And so China is also trying to adjust to this, shape it, but not necessarily jettison it.
Right.
Because it knows that it's very difficult to jettison.
Right.
So what you are actually looking at is an extended period where you will have some new norms, new ways of doing business coming into being. At the same time, parallelly, you have the old system continuing.
Right.
So that kind of a hybrid system is likely to be what we will be seeing over the next several years.
Right.
It will not be a settled system.
So what essentially was happening, as you're saying, is that what is modern was being defined by the West every era of in the past so many years, centuries. But now, as Professor Adam too says, the master key to modernity is with China today. China is no more analytical problem as we see it, but it is the key to modernity, and it is what is defining everything modern today.
I'll nuance that a bit.
All right.
There is no doubt that China is emerging as one of the dominant, international actors. Okay, but I will not go so far to say that modernity is being defined by China.
Right.
I would say that modernity today has many versions, many manifestations. One of it, which is a significant one, is China. But it is not as that if it's China is the only source.
Right.
Right. So that's why I said that there are many other
regional
powers, fairly substantial powers. For example, in their own regions, they may be much more influential and powerful than perhaps globally.
Right.
So we have to take that into account. Take, for example, India's own contribution in terms of, say, the digital stack.
Right.
Now, we are not a highly developed country in the same league as China today.
Right.
But as far as some niche areas are concerned, we are actually in a position to offer those global public goods.
Yes.
So there is a certain diffusion that is taking place in terms of both influence as well as the ability to provide those global public goods. So China, yes, dominant player, but not necessarily the only player.
Right.
In that respect. So I would just nuance it a bit.
All right. So as you mentioned India as one of these powers. Now we have seen a reset in our own relationship with the US. We have seen a reset in our relationship with China as well. And how do you see the reset with the US? I know you've said before as well that this reset is sort of a structural shift, as a lot of elements of that is a structural one. And there is, even if Trump goes, there is no going back to an old relationship, the India-US relationship. There's no square one left for us to go back to, is what you said. Could you explain that?
So the reason why I said there is no square one to go back to is putting it in the context of something like 25 years of a trajectory of relationship between India and the US, which has been going up and up and up.
Right.
Okay. So we got used to the idea that this is a curve which is going to keep going up. I think the shock for us is that not necessarily is going to keep going up. And the surprise was greater because Trump 1.0 seemed to indicate that not only is Trump very invested in this partnership, is also very much concerned about the China factor.
Right.
And that as long as this perspective remains, India will continue to enjoy a kind of a privileged relationship with the United States of America. Now, that suited us well because there is no doubt that even today, and perhaps for some time to come, the United States of America is going to be the preeminent power with regard to cutting edge technology.
Yes.
All the 5-6 major, high technology firms are all with the United States.
Yes.
So this relationship is very important for us in the economic transformation of India itself. So if technology has now become the major driver of growth, there is no doubt that the partnership with the United States of America is of great importance to us. So what has happened is that even though the overall strategic perspective of the United States is changing, where India's role is somewhat diminished, this partnership has so far not been affected. So I give the example of the renewal of the 10-year defense cooperation framework. Many people thought that it may not be actually renewed, but it was actually renewed without too much difficulty. Maybe because Trump believes that why should we lose the Indian market, as far as defense is concerned. Whatever be the reason, there are components of the relationship which are continuing undisturbed, and we should not be the ones to disturb it as long as that continues. But we should understand that the overall context of the relationship with the United States of America has changed. It has changed because if we look at, say, Trump 1.0, not so far back, the United States of America believed that US global dominance demanded that the US be also globally dominant in Asia Pacific, or what we call Indo-Pacific. That its ability to maintain its preeminence required that it retain its predominance in the Indo-Pacific region. Okay. because the whole center of gravity of
shifted
to the Indo-Pacific. And that, therefore, gave the importance to India and to organizations like the Quad, for example. Very central part of the Indo-Pacific strategy. That has undergone. So you hear more voices today in Trump 2.0 saying, in order to maintain global dominance, so they have not forgotten about global dominance, but they are saying that in order to have that global dominance, first priority has to be given to our own hemisphere.
Right.
We must be fully dominant in the Americas. Greenland has to be ours. Canada, you should become a part of us. As far as South America is concerned, you see what is happening with Venezuela, for example. All these point to there being a certain shift in strategic perspective.
Right.
Okay. First, we have to secure this. Then we can talk about. Now, you will see also reflected much more dramatically in the relationship between the US and Europe.
Right.
It has completely changed. I mean, the US is no longer invested in the security of Europe to the extent that it is willing to talk along the talking points of Russia rather than look at. So you can see how dramatically that has changed. And Indo-Pacific, it may not be so clear, but the trend in that direction, which is why he's all the time saying, I have excellent relationship with Xi Jinping. You know, we have come to a very good understanding with China, that this relationship is going to be very, very strong and very positive going forward. Even if that is tactical, it has consequences for countries like it. So what I'm seeing is, going forward, we cannot depend on the assumption that the US will be as invested in Indo-Pacific as it has been in the past.
Right.
Therefore, much of the burden of dealing with the China challenge will be more squarely on our shoulders than it has been in the past.
And our relationship with China, as you have mentioned several times before as well, has always, ebbed and flowed according to our closeness or distance from the US. And China has behaved accordingly with us. And now with this de-Americanization happening, as we are concerned, how do you think China will behave? I mean, we have already...
All the recent interactions with the Chinese, what we have found is there is a greater arrogance in dealing with India. There is greater sense that, you better come to understand that, your American connection is no longer, as effective as you thought it was. And therefore, the sooner you come to terms with China on Chinese terms, the better it would be. So there is a certain kind of a newer sort of stance of even arrogance, I would say, in dealing with India. But I must also confess that there is some doubt in their mind also because of the uncertainty of US under Donald Trump. So they are not quite certain, as many of us also suffer, what this person will do next. So it is a very unpredictable kind of situation. And the one thing Chinese don't like is unpredictable. They are much they want things to be predictable. They want relationship between countries to be predictable and stable. So in that sense of uncertainty and a shifting kind of a geopolitical landscape, which can turn against them, they think, as it has turned in their favor, it makes sense for them to have perhaps a more positive relationship with him. So the way they put it across to us, I will mention to you. So, for example, in one of the conversations I had with a very senior Chinese party official, he said, look, in this very turbulent world, where everything is unpredictable, where even mature democracies like, for example, in Western Europe, we are seeing political turmoil. We are saying that they are quite shaky. The only two zones of stability in the world are India and China.
Oh, that's very interesting.
That you have had a really stable polity
Right.
over the last 10 years and more.
Right.
We can say the same
Yeah.
for us. So if we are looking around the world, we see that there are these two major zones of stability.
Right.
They are like anchors
Right.
of stability in a very changing world. And therefore, in that context, does it not make sense for you and us to work together on some of our convergent interests?
Right.
So there is that viewpoint as well. In addition to this viewpoint of you better accept
Right.
that
But
one.
are we okay with that thing?
It depends upon how it works out.
What are our options?
So I'll give you the example I would give is of an earlier period when they were still not, the gap between us was not as great as it is today. They were, for example, working together with us very much on climate change.
Yes. Yes.
They were also working together with us, for example, on global trade issues.
Right.
So there were a number of international issues, multilateral issues, where they recognized that India and China working together would be far more effective, would exercise far greater influence than if we were not working.
Right.
Okay. So whether or not in this change situation, they see that there is a value in working together with India on at least some of these convergent issues remains to be seen. But that possibility certainly, I think, is there.
Right. Which, again, I'm sure that there are a lot of nuances in this because we saw the skirmish between India and Pakistan, the conflict between India and Pakistan, and Chinese had helped Pakistan there. Where does that leave us? I mean, how much can, it's not about trust really, right? I mean, it's again, how do you play this strategically? How do you play this tactically? All of those things. So where do we stand on this? What are the options?
I mean, I have a diplomat's perspective on this. A diplomat will not look for an either-or solution.
Right.
You know, there are the only way that I can work is in a gray area. You know, if it is black and white, then there is not much room for me to work. So if you look at the gray area, to expect that I can only deal with the Chinese if they detach themselves from Pakistan, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But if working together in some areas with China dampens their willingness to sort of push Pakistan in a very hostile position vis India, that helps us.
Yes.
Okay. So rather than look for, either or solutions, I should be looking at how do I manage my relationship with China? How do I manage my relationship with the United States? So that this kind of a hostile security threat to India is diminished. It will not be eliminated.
Right.
Okay. In the same vein, I would say, even if it is very difficult at this point of time to envisage some improvement of relations between India and Pakistan, we should actually be looking for that.
Right.
Because if even there is a limited improvement in relations between India and Pakistan, our diplomatic space expands.
Right.
The ability of other countries to use India-Pakistan hostility for their own purposes, that will diminish.
Right.
Including by China.
Right.
So I think the way to look at this is when we are looking at how do we reorder our foreign policy, reorder our relationship with other countries, we should always keep in mind where are the gray areas. Where is there possibility of creating or expanding those gray areas?
Right.
So that diplomacy can start working in those areas.
Right.
And this was really the case for a number of years since the turn of the century, first with Mr. Vajpayee, then with Dr. Manmohan Singh. We were able to slowly keep expanding our diplomatic space. After all, the Indo-US nuclear deal would not have been possible if that changed diplomatic environment had not been leveraged to our advantage.
The strategic altruism of President Bush, which
was, okay, India may not be an ally of the United States, but India, for its own reasons, will pursue policies which will be actually supportive of what the US wants to.
Right. I've read that the President Bush personally called up the Chinese president and told him that we want this deal done, and other heads of state as well. That
they played there is no doubt that they played a very key role in getting the NSG clearance. But people also forget that we also did a huge amount of work. I'm not saying that I did that work. I mean, we had a team that we was working together. But I don't think we should underestimate the kind of lobbying that was done very effectively by India itself.
Right.
So with countries like, say, Brazil, South Africa, with Japan, it was really our effort, and including at the very highest level, that we were able to persuade these countries to, despite all the reservations that they had, to support India, because it is India.
So why, since you mentioned lobbying, I mean, I've asked you this question before as well. Why doesn't our lobbying seem to be very effective? So, for instance, again, the US, China Security and Economic Commission, which sort of gave a verdict on the India-Pakistan conflict, as Pakistan seems to have won which again, it sets a narrative, which again sort of puts India in a corner. Is it something which lobbying can help us overcome, or is it that a competitive lobbying we lose out on that?
Different leaderships, different dispensations may have their own way of looking at things, own way of doing things. I would say that my experience has been that the most important asset that you can have in influencing opinion amongst your partners, international partners, is credibility. How credible are you in your dealings with other countries? Therefore, even if there is a great temptation to try and obfuscate or try and hide things, thinking that you will be able to convince people that you came off better, or the Pakistanis suffered greater damage, without what exactly the situation was. I would say that the best policy is to be as credible as you can be, as transparent as you can. Because in the longer run, that helps you much more than having to later on say, well, this may have happened, or yes, I acknowledge that perhaps I made a mistake. I would say that there has to be a realization that the most effective tool in diplomacy is credibility. Okay. And transparency. Even if it is a bit damaging to you in the first instance, to say, okay, yeah, we came off second best in this encounter, that encounter.
We lost half a dozen aircraft.
Maybe. I don't know whether we lost half a dozen aircraft. Even if we lost, as this US Commission says, maybe 3 or 4. If we, without knowing what we lost or what we did not, if we were upfront and said, yeah, this is what happened. And this is what we were able to do in terms of inflicting damage on the other side. Story would end there. You would not have, weeks and weeks of all kinds of speculation and, is this really happened or did not happen? All your energy is devoted to trying to, fend off those kind of, allegations. So one is that. Second is that in this particular case, what we did not realize was, and which we should have realized, that even if there was sympathy for India as having been a victim of cross-border terrorism, there is a greater concern about the nuclear issue. And Pakistan is able to play that game very well. Through nuclear brinkmanship, which for us is very difficult. We want to be seen as a very responsible, sober, path. The Pakistanis know that everything else can be, sort of pushed, not aside, but can be pushed to the side by raising the issue of a nuclear conflict. So even though we may have sent out, parliamentary delegations, and maybe a good job was done in putting our version across to these countries, and the kind of, very inimical policies that were being followed by Pakistan, all that granted, but we cannot sort of minimize the concern that people have that a India-Pakistan confrontation could escalate to a nuclear confrontation.
Right.
No matter how much we keep saying, no, that is not our intention, that is not going to happen. This does operate in people's minds.
Right.
So when you have that kind of situation, it is sometimes worthwhile to think, is it
Right.
is it necessary for us to raise the profile
stakes
of this at all? There may be two views about it, but I think it is worthwhile for us to reflect on how international narratives are built through past experience as well.
Absolutely.
We have, after all, had past experience where there has been great concern about what may happen between India and Pakistan on the nuclear side.
Yes.
So given that, we should have realized that our ability to minimize the concern, international concern on the nuclear issue would sometimes work in the favor of the Pakistanis as far as narrative building is concerned.
Now that Pakistanis have extended that umbrella to even Saudis, with that strategic deal, how does that change the equation in the Middle East? And how does it even affect us in any way?
I do not think so. First of all, I think I have pointed out, perhaps in our last conversation, this particular agreement between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, which has been made public now, perhaps goes back to a much earlier period, may have been kept confidential, where the Saudis did finance a lot of the nuclear development in Pakistan. And there were already reports, I recall, in the late 80s, where suggestion was that the Saudis were ready to bankroll the Pakistan's nuclear weapons program on the understanding that if and when they may need to access this deterrent, it would be made available.
Right.
Okay.
So this umbrella existed, but it was invisible.
Yes. Certainly, it was reported. I remember very, very clearly that this was already reported.
Right.
Why would the Saudis make available millions of dollars if there was nothing coming to them in return? Also, that the Saudis began to acquire a longer range strategic missiles, which doesn't make sense if you do not have intention at least to get a nuclear deterrent. So there was already signs that this is probably in place, but it is confidential. Then the question arises, why was it made public now?
Right.
I think it was made public because of the attack on Qatar. I think the Saudis basically wanted to convey that any kind of a misadventure against Saudi Arabia, they have a powerful deterrent.
Thus far and no further. So does it change in any way our relationships in that region? Not particularly this deal per se, but our relationship in the Middle East region.
If I compare our relationship with the Middle East today compared to what it was, say, 15 years ago or 20 years ago, that is already a dramatic change. So we should welcome the fact that we have far stronger relationship with countries like Saudi Arabia, with the UAE, with Qatar, with others. And even though there may be some nuances here and there, where we may not be very happy with what they may be doing with Pakistan, I think we should welcome the fact that despite that not so positive element, the larger picture is actually more positive today than compared to, say, 10 years ago.
Right.
And as I said, we should not be looking for either or situation.
Yeah, sure. Yes, absolutely.
That is something which I think always is a problem in the manner in which we judge or assess situations. That we are always looking for what the black and the white.
Unfortunately, this year has been so dark gray that it is difficult to even see anywhere.
Yes, but the way to look at this is that it is only in a period of change that opportunities also arise.
Right.
If there is a frozen international landscape, then there is not much room for maneuver.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is only when you have a very shifting landscape, and if you are agile, and if you are deft, then you can also take advantage of the openings which become available because of the shifts that are taking place.
Okay.
Yeah. So you should approach this with a somewhat different mindset rather than saying, oh, things are changing everywhere and we are, under pressure.
Right.
Also try to look at, are there openings which are also there, which we can exploit?
Right.
And probably you might find that, yes, there are opportunities.
So the PM's visit to Cyprus and the deal with in Cyprus port is one of those kind of things, I would imagine.
Every one of these relationships, because what is coming to the fore is that the wider the network of relationships that you have with multiple countries in multiple regions, all this helps you deal with what is a very changing kind of landscape.
That brings me to one of our oldest relationships, and which today, incidentally, President Putin is in town. Now, our relationship with Russia, like recently, Professor Raja Mohan also wrote, that it has sort of become limited to weapons and oil and all that. The broader scope of the relationship, or rather now the scope of the relationship has narrowed quite a bit. Do you think this visit might help expand it a little bit more? I would add one more thing there. With the US, even though government-to-government relationships were not so great until the turn of the century, people-to-people relationships were, and business-to-business relations were, and we had a huge diaspora in the US. We don't have a diaspora in Russia, but we did have a large contingent of political cohort in India, which resonated with an ideology from the Soviet Union and policies from the Soviet Union, for example, planned development and all of those kind of things. Those have diminished considerably. So how do you see it today?
I don't think we should overinterpret India-Russia relations, and we should not have more significant expectations from this relationship than is warranted by what the reality of the situation is. So number one, if our interest is in ensuring that Russia doesn't move too close to China, because that will obviously shrink our geopolitical space, I'm afraid that is not realistic. So I believe that the Russia-China relationship is very and is likely to continue to be as strategically aligned as it is today. Why do I say that? Because if I look at it from the China perspective, actually southward expansion has been made possible thanks to see as this massive shield that is behind that. This was a hostile, not be direct, the south. So, interest in this longer term relationship with the Russia. For Russia, this is what they are looking for. The fact is that as long as their Western flag, that is basically the European flag, if that remains hostile, this continues to make sense. And I cannot see in the foreseeable future that this Western flag will become less hostile for Russia, even if some compromises are arrived at. Supposing tomorrow the Ukraine war is resolved at the cost of maybe Ukraine's territory. Even if that happens, I cannot see in the foreseeable future that Russia-Europe relations will significantly change. So that's, for the foreseeable future, that is something that is likely to continue. If that is likely to continue, the Russian interest in China is likely to continue. That is more or less given. Now, in that context, if our calculation is that if we expand our relations with Russia and we invest more in that relationship than we are investing today, that this will have a significant change in the relationship between China and Russia. That's not going to happen. So I think we should be realistic enough to realize that this strategic alignment between Russia and China is probably going to be stable for the foreseeable future.
Right.
Now, despite that, there are enough reasons for India and Russia to work together.
Mhm.
Even if people say, oh, this is because of legacy issues,
Right.
40% or 45% of your air assets and a lot of your armed forces are so heavily dependent upon spares and maintenance from Russia. I would say that's pretty important. To say that this is marginal is not a very accurate depiction.
Right.
So if somebody is saying, oh, it's not really very important because they are limited only to, I would say this is very important for your security interests, that this particular legacy relationship remains intact. Secondly, there are also some areas of high technology which are still not available to us from the US,
Right.
which are available to us from the Russians.
Right.
Nuclear submarines, for example. It's very, after all, our nuclear fleet is essentially being supported by Russia. We would not get that from the United States. Or some of the very high-tech, anti-missile systems, like the S-400, or maybe there is a S-500 which is coming. I think we will continue to have an interest in those, which also seem to have been proven during the Operation Sindur. So I would not minimize the importance of these, relationships by saying these are only legacy. The legacy is very important to us, at least during this particular period. Diversification can take place only over a period of time. It cannot happen overnight. And then if you ask me, why is it important to maintain a good relationship with Russia? Even if it is for legacy reasons, it is.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So let's not minimize that. As far as the energy side is concerned, not so important because many alternatives are available to us.
Yes.
So if for whatever reason we are not able to access oil or gas Russia, it is not going to put us at a great disadvantage. Maybe we have to pay a couple of more per barrel of oil, but that's not such an important thing. To the extent able to benefit from lower prices from Russia, why not? Provide it does not affect our access to the international financial. And unfortunately, that continues to be important for us. So if we can work out alternative payment methods, yes, why not? We can continue. But the old rupee-ruble system is no longer possible. And because we sell so little to Russia, if we were able to, say, pay for the oil imports in rupees, what will the Russians do with those rupees?
Which is what already happened.
Exactly. So there are limits to which our energy partnership can go. Energy partnership was identified as a major area of cooperation between the two countries, even when I was Foreign Secretary. I remember Putin's visit here in 2004 or 2005, and this was a major issue.
The first visit
that we should be having, much stronger economic energy partnership. As a result of which we took up a couple of projects in Sakhalin, from which we
ONGC.
And there was another project onshore in Russia, but not beyond. So there are limitations with respect to the energy partnership. As far as other trade issues are concerned, I'm not very sure that we are able to do very much. To the extent that Russia can source, perishables from India, some, consumer goods from India, fine. But they are next door, they have China.
From China.
Yeah, exactly. So we should understand that there are certain limitations. Given those limitations, as I said, don't overinterpret, don't over-expect as far as the relationship is concerned. But in the current geopolitical situation, even a signaling that we have a strong, enduring partnership with Russia is useful to us. We should not deny that, because it if you're looking for the expanded room for maneuver, signaling that you have this strong, partnership with Russia is useful.
Right. Yes. Mentioned 2005. Ever in conversation at that point of time
with Russia?
No.
Not
but
that
in our general conversations,
that time there was
nobody
not
was
much,
thinking about
there was not much interest in that. The only that the interest came up was when the Chinese stopped rare earth exports to Japan, when there was that naval incident where the
islands,
when the Japanese detained a Chinese ship and arrested the captain.
Right.
The Chinese retaliated by stopping all rare earth exports to Japan. So at that time, the Japanese turned to us and said, can we collaborate together in developing rare earth resources that you have and processing, so that we can mutually benefit from this. But as far as I know, that project did not make too much progress because the customers on the Japanese side soon were able to get again cheaper alternatives from China, so they did not. So that long term was not unfortunately
neither for us nor for Japan.
We have the resources, but
I mean that long term vision was neither with us nor with Japan at that time. Because that was probably the first sign that this was leveraged, right?
Yes, they should have not only Japanese, but we should have.
We should have.
Look, the greater the dependence, the more vulnerable you are. But
we didn't think about it.
Even if we thought about it, the Japanese lost interest after some time because, as I said, they were able to get cheaper, imports from China. So, if we are
basically from a geopolitical perspective, that this is an instrument of leverage was demonstrated there.
Yes, not only demonstrated there, but it was demonstrated again with the Australians.
Right.
Okay. When they got angry with the Australians because of what was said about their responsibility for the COVID. You remember how many penalties they put on,
including import of wine.
So they have shown themselves quite willing to use commercial relations as leverage for geopolitical ends. But therefore you should have been much more careful about how much exposure you have to China. And by the way, it's not only the US, not only Japan, but look at us. We are so heavily exposed.
Well, sir, thank you so much for I think we are at the end of our allotted time. Thank you so much for, it was absolutely insightful what you just told us today.
That's my pleasure.
IG, back to you.
Thank you, Dinesh. Thank you, Ambassador Shyam Saran, for that expansive and very deeply insightful perspective on India's place in a shifting world order. With this conversation, we bring our 2025 in review to a close. And across the episodes from Beijing to Washington, from Paris to New Delhi, certain themes have stood out unmistakably. That power is dispersing, norms are eroding, technology and geopolitics, they're colliding, and every nation, and like we heard today, including India, is being forced to rethink long-held assumptions. Ambassador Saran has helped us to see not only global turbulence in 2025 and how that's kind of reshaped India's strategic environment, but also the choices from partnerships to postures that must evolve in response and the opportunities that come up. Now, to help consolidate the key learnings from this special series, Dinesh will be writing a sharp essay that distills the common threads and the big takeaways from all across these 5 conversations. So please watch out for it on foundingfuel.com. If you missed any of the earlier episodes with Professor Yao Yang, Sandeep Vaslekar, Justin Logan, or Philippe Lecour, you can find them along with the key takeaways on our website, foundingfuel.com. So this has been 2025 in Review, a Founding Fuel podcast series where foresight met reality in a year of profound change. I'm Indrajit Gupta. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to continuing the conversation in the months ahead. Thank you.